It's a mystery still looming over the Hampton Roads community.
Prosecutors are disappointed with today's results.
The district attorney wanted murder. He got manslaughter.
Hey everyone,
instead.
welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda, and in today's video, I will be talking about true crime in the news. So that means I'll be discussing court hearings, those with upcoming trials, or anything that is currently in the news. But take a moment real fast to like this video and remember that there is an audio version of this on most podcasting apps. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the last video or if this is the first video I've released since I've been releasing them in audio form. I'm trying to keep it nice and simple, and I just named it True Crime with Amanda. So if podcasts are more your thing, feel free to find me there. First, we're going to discuss Andre McDonald again. Hopefully, this is the last update for him for a while. Andre was convicted of manslaughter of his wife, Andreen McDonald, and was sentenced to 20 years in prison within this last month. I do have a video on the case trial that I previously did if you want to go a little more in depth. But it does look like he was in court again to be sentenced to an additional 5 years for his tampering with evidence charge. I believe this is when he was ripping up the receipts of things he purchased. It looks like this was part of a plea deal that he took, and he will be serving these 5 years consecutively, which means one right after another. So that equals about 25 years for the manslaughter, if you believe his story when he took the stand, of Andreen McDonald. I kind of want to mention just a little tidbit. It was mentioned on my previous videos by someone who commented, so I just wanted to throw it in there because I did see it, and it's a little interesting in my opinion. So Andre's father, Everton McDonald, also known as B.G. Strout, I guess. Not really sure why he's called that, but he is awaiting trial for the murder of his second wife. It appears he is also charged with murdering his first wife, but I didn't see too many details going into the first wife or even really much of the second wife. It is just saying that he is waiting for the trial. Just thought it was terrible that father and son are both either convicted or being accused of killing their wives. Moving on, though. I recently released a video on the tragic case of Naomi Arion. If you haven't seen that video, I would say go watch it because her story is one of those stories I think about every day that I leave my house. Every day I'm in my car, especially by myself. Every day I park in a parking lot and just sit there and wait on my phone. I think about Naomi. That was one of the reasons I covered her case, and I wanted to comment that in the video that I released for her is just how much her story affects my life every day. Real quick, her story began in March 2022, where she was sitting in her car at about 5:30 in the morning waiting for a bus to take her to work, like a park and ride. So she was sitting in her car and chatting with friends that she had in different area codes, and a man with ill intentions approached her car, opened her door, and forced her to move over in her car and drove away, kidnapping her. Shockingly, this was all caught on camera as the kidnapping took place in a Walmart parking lot. And a few weeks later, Troy Driver was arrested for her kidnapping, and he would be later charged with her murder when her body was found in a shallow grave. So Troy Driver, as I mentioned, he was arrested for her kidnapping. He was also charged with her sexual assault. Driver was supposed to have his pretrial hearing on February 16th and February 17th. However, early last week, he went ahead and waived his right for that hearing. And so now there's another hearing scheduled for March 27th, which hopefully he will take a plea or a trial date will be set. I'm not sure what the hearing on the 27th is for, other than it's prior to the trial, because he waived his rights for this most recent hearing. So there's been no comment on what the next hearing will discuss that I could find anyways. So we shall see together on February 27th when I follow up on it. All right, Lori Vallow has yet another case update. I shouldn't be surprised that in every video there's an update on Lori Vallow. It seems to be the norm now. Hopefully that means that we're actually getting to trial though. So just because this is the first video I will be putting in audio form, I want to include a little tidbit about what the case is about, so that way people who are only listening in the podcast form can understand it. But as we move on from here, I'll probably be commenting on less and less in the future videos about what her case is, just because it's an every video occurrence. And if you are into true crime, then I'm sure you've heard Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell's names. But real quick, Lori Vallow and her most recent husband, Chad Daybell, are both on trial for the murder of Lori's 16-year-old daughter, Tylee Ryan, and her 7-year-old son, JJ Vallow, and the murder of Chad's first wife, Tammy Daybell. There's so much to this case that it's hard to recap because it's been happening since 2019 when Lori was requested to produce her children after JJ's grandparents requested a welfare check. Soon, Lori was arrested for not providing the children, and things kind of went downhill from there. Police would soon find the children buried in Chad's backyard, and Chad would then be arrested. Tammy's death was originally ruled as a natural death. However, after all these things started coming out and people started realizing exactly how Chad and Lori were, they decided to exhume her body. And both Chad and Lori are now charged with her murder. Lori is also charged out of Arizona in the death of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, which is JJ's father and the husband prior to Chad. Religion, money, and selfishness are surrounded by this case. So if it's something you want to look into more, there's definitely a ton out there. There's Netflix docs. I'm sure there's plenty of other docs on other streaming services. YouTube has a ton of people covering it. I'm sure that you've heard about it by now. But back to the updates. As I expected, Judge Boyce denied Lori's request to dismiss her case for violating her right to a speedy trial. So I guess we're going to trial at the moment. According to the judge's calculations, they must go to trial prior to November 15th, 2023, before Lori's rights are violated without cause, I guess. The most recent hearing was yesterday, February 23rd, when both Lori and Chad were back in court. During this hearing, the state requested that mental health evidence be excluded as defense for both Chad and Lori. And the judge granted this. However, this could change in the penalty phase if found guilty. Chad's attorney, John Pryor, filed a motion requesting a severance again and a continuance, which was argued by both sides at this hearing. Pryor says that this is a capital murder charge and that his client could get the death penalty, so he should not be rushed to trial. However, if you've been following this case, you've seen all the hearings, then you know that Pryor previously said prior to October of 2022 that he was ready to go. I think that he's trying to sever these cases and he is doing what he has to do to sever them. In his motions filed requesting severance, he describes that he thinks that Chad will not get a fair trial if his trial is joined with Lori's. Mostly probably because he's blaming it all on Lori, in my opinion, but we'll have to wait to see. Judge Boyce said that he would issue a written decision on these two arguments. It appears that the next hearing is on March 9th, so I'm sure they'll be issued by then. I mentioned in my previous video, but wanted to mention for the new audio, that in most cases, I do not keep up with the judges' names or the lawyers of either the defendant or the prosecution, but this case has been going on for so long, so many hearings, that I can't help but remember them. Real quick for Aiden Fucci, he was back in court yesterday also to discuss his sentencing phase of his trial, which is expected to happen the week of March 21st. He has another status hearing on March 8th to make sure that everything is on track for each side to present their cases in that sentencing phase of the trial. If you didn't catch my video on Aiden Fucci, he was arrested when he was just 14 years old for the murder of his 13-year-old classmate, Tristan Bailey. It would come out during her autopsy that he stabbed Tristan 114 times. And a lot of those times were defense wounds as Miss Tristan tried to fight for her life. Saying that just breaks my heart that anybody at 13 years old or ever has to fight for their life. But during the investigation, police uncovered that Aiden was actually telling his friends, other 13 and 14-year-olds, that he wanted to drag someone into the woods and stab them to death, basically. Exactly what happened to Tristan. Aiden's trial was set to begin with jury selection back on February 6th, but surprised all of us by pleading guilty. Thankfully, that meant that the huge family mourning Tristan's death did not have to face these images and descriptions that you normally have at a trial. So he pled guilty to first-degree murder and is facing between 40 years and life in prison. He's just waiting for the sentencing, and we can hope to be done with Aiden Fucci for a long, long time. Unfortunately, since he was a minor when he committed the crime, I believe he'll be up for review to be released in 25 years. Now, that doesn't mean he'll be released. That just means he'll be up to be reviewed. On to Leilani Simon, who I do not believe I have covered yet in any of the videos I've put out. So I'll quickly recap what is happening in her case, which is taking place in Savannah, Georgia. 23-year-old Leilani Simon reported her 20-month-old son, Quentin Simon, missing to police on October 5th, 2021, stating that the last time she saw him was about 6:30 in the morning, but then she can no longer locate him. First, she accused Quentin's father of taking him right out of his pack and play. However, this was quickly proven to be false. Eventually, police would start to search the local landfill, and after about a month, they would end up finding the remains of a child that would later be identified in November as Quentin Simon. His mother was arrested shortly after the identification was made, and after a grand jury indictment, she was charged with 19 charges, including murder of her son. So a few things about her most recent hearing. The judge has banned all future live streams for this trial, most likely due to all the media coverage. This is unfortunate for us people who like to keep up on the cases, but it is not unheard of. The judge hearing the case also requested the records from the Child Services of Georgia State pertaining to Leilani and her 3 children. The judge is going to review these cases or these files and see if they will be pertinent to trial and let in. Also, Leilani's mother, Billy Joe, who was supposed to have Quentin in his care. It's a big ordeal, and I can definitely eventually cover a video on this case. However, it's so sad. It's so sad. So sad. But Billy Joe had to provide 8 journals that Leilani wrote while she was in a treatment facility she was attending, and the judge will review those and see if they're pertinent to trial. According to the indictment that was filed, Leilani was allegedly on drugs when she murdered her 20-month-old son, and she went to a treatment facility shortly after while police were investigating where her son was. At one point, her and her mother were even caught taking shots at a bar while the police were searching for the grandson. It's just a devastating case. Devastating. Anyways, so that wraps up today's case update. If you have any comments of cases that you would like me to follow, please feel free to comment those. Please make sure to like and subscribe to this video. All my sources and social media handles will be in the description box, where you can also find ways to support the channel. Until the next video, stay safe out there. The world can be a really ugly place.